Greetings all, I'm coming in before this video because I know it's a really long one, but with that in mind, please, if you like this content, please leave a like. I'd like to hit, maybe 30 likes or so on this video. It is a lot of work. Engage in the comments if you can. Let me know what your favorite part of this poem was. So, with that in mind, let's go ahead and dive in.
Woohoo! It's the new year. Party like it's whatever year this is.
Off to the wanderer, weary of exile, cometh God's pity, compassionate love. Though woefully toiling on wintry seas.
What are you on about, man? What are you smoking now?
The Wanderer, Tunka, an Anglo-Saxon classic. It's the story of loyalty, struggle, depression, death, decay, redemption, and even more.
Only you would start the new year with something this daggum depressing. Man, you need some medication.
Well, you're right, but recent years have seen this poem surfacing again and again about once a year or so I think this year it's our turn, and for my part, I haven't seen many discuss the work in terms of depression, PTSD, coping mechanisms, established norms, and the like that you would see through the 8th, ninth, and 10th century when this poem was potentially in circulation, much like Beowulf. And it has some relationships to both Beowulf and Tolkien that we're going to kind of tease out and touch on just a little bit throughout. For those that would like to see a paper on this subject, if this video does get enough likes, I will happily release my paper to anyone that wants it.
Well, it sounds like you have something to add. Let's try to keep it short. You've talked about this for hours before. I know I have endured it.
Well, I'll try. Let's start with the base text and perform an analysis as we go. As you've seen by the length of this video, this is going to be a very long discussion, so grab a cup of tea and read along or simply just listen. I'll bring up the quotes as we go. As a reminder, see the description for footnotes, sources, etc. I do cite everything I use.
And for those keeping score at home and who actually care, yes, we know about both of you. He's using the Kennedy's translation. He favors the alliteration in Kennings more than some other language hippies.
Yeah, kennings. Things like cat snake, whale road, danger noodle, nope rope. Two words that come together and mean something greater than what the two original mean. So, that said, let's get on with it. Off to the wanderer, weary of exile, cometh God's pity, compassionate love. Though woefully toiling on wintry seas, with churning of oar in the icy wave, homeless and helpless, he fled from fate. Thus saith the wanderer, mindful of misery, grievous disasters, and death of kin. The wanderer, the subject and speaker of the poem, is set up as weary. He is in exile and a receiver of God's pity. Lines 1 to 2. The despondency the wanderer feels even as he receives God's pity sets up the struggle of the story. The wanderer is combating his feelings of depression, loss, loneliness, and regret with the wisdom of experience and the trust he must place in others. The quote-unquote wintry seas and icy wave set the narrative within a liminal space of a freezing ocean. Lines 3 to 4. The ocean for the Anglo-Saxons was a place of travel, and nature was often represented as hostile. The wanderer, quote-unquote, mindful of misery, grievous disasters, and death of kin, and it is in these elements, the loss of friends and family, the exhaustion, the natural environment, and of course his own torment, that are, of course, central themes and central recurring motifs in this poem. The wanderer is aware of and also caught up in his position of hopeless struggle when all he can do is move forward. These feelings, writing in, of course, the time of COVID-19 when this paper was originally written, and post-COVID-19 are, of course, not unknown to many, as everyone is caught by their environment. They have lost loved ones, and they must find a way to move on in life.
Ah, yes, COVID. It finds its way into everything.
Well, oft at the daybreak, oft at the dawning. Lonely and wretched, I wailed my woe. No man is living, no comrade left to whom I dare fully unlock my heart. I have learned truly the mark of a man is keeping his counsel and locking his lips. Let him think what he will, for woe of heart withstandeth not fate. A failing spirit earneth no help. Men eager for honor bury their sorrow deep in their breast. Lines 8 to 17 are the first direct speech of the wanderer and declare his chronic suffering. The first person singular translated as I signifies his speech, and the mixing of tenses is an intentional rhetorical tool that intensifies the message. Specifically, the wanderer's kin are male and denote the patriarchal kinship that men provided to other men so they could, quote unquote, unlock their heart or share their suffering. See line 10. The phenomenon remains amongst military veterans today, and the human need to share struggles with those in a similar position. The Wanderer expresses another cultural view here. Life is full of suffering, hardship, and pain, but it is not for you to wail your woes to others. As, and I quote, men eager for honor bury their sorrow deep in their breast, the custom, at least according to the poem, would be the repression of outward expression of feelings. See lines 16 to 17. Those same feelings, now having built up, have become like a cancer for the wanderer. He has no one to confide in.
Well, the Wanderer, and this may be a little off topic, but the Wanderer also outlines what it really is to grow up a biological male because of how society conditions us to keep everything inside because we must always present a presence of strength. And to have any type of emotion or to go through anything and show it would be a sign of weakness.
Yeah, it's the idea of like real men don't cry, or looking at the action heroes, because in a sense these poems are, if you want to think of him that way.
Keep reading, brother. Preach, brother.
Well, let's continue. So have I also, often in wretchedness, fettered my feelings, far from my kin, homeless and helpless, since days of old, when the dark earth covered my dear Lord's face, and I sailed away with sorrowful heart, over wintry seas, seeking a gold friend. If far or near lived one to sustain me, with gift in the mead hall, and comfort for grief. The masculine identity of the wanderer, now of course without his patriarch, continues to be in flux in these lines. The wanderer asserts he has long since withheld, he has fettered his feelings, lines 18 to 19. He searches for a new lord that he can share these feelings with, a search that, quote unquote, since days of old, has left him homeless, line 20. For the Anglo-Saxons, the grieving process may have been a long one, but longer still was the journey to acquire a new lord. The ties of kinship, alluded to here, assert that the wanderer did not side with his lord's killers or some other rival lord. He had the freedom to choose exile and search as a free man. Exile was a common theme in Scandinavian, Germanic, and Anglo-Saxon works. Peoples whose cultures had and, of course, continued to blend throughout the early and into the high medieval period. The cost of this exile is the loss of those things that sustained him, his lord, i.e., his gold friend, being both his financier, but also a dearly loved individual because of the concept of fealty, lines 23 to 25. This care is the source of the wanderer's exile. Care that made the wanderer bury his quote unquote dear lord, and that same care stops him from putting joy in others. In a patriarchal world of the warrior elite, that is to say the Anglo-Saxons, this caring element, this fealty, is keenly reflected here.
And once again, I would say this holds up the mirror to what modern society expects of masculine.
Though I think any concept of fealty, we would not be as loyal to, say, our modern boss as he is, right? We don't have that kind of masculine
Right.
cult identity thinking. But that said, certain elements do exist.
Right. What this poem is also pointing out, this was more than just another lord, right? If his golden friend was just a lord, the chances of him siding with the Lord's killers would go up. But he saw this other person as as a close friend and confidant. If he was able to trust this other person enough to share, his quote perceived weakness with, to help overcome. And in essence, you could say this person is lost and is looking for a friend that he can trust.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it does bring into question the relationship of fealty and exactly how much, whether the Lord or the other men in the mead hall serve as almost like therapists or counselors to each other, which of
Right.
course doesn't get written about or talked about. But for the sake, let's continue. Who bears it knows what a bitter companion, shoulder to shoulder, sorrow can be when friends are no more. His fortune is exile, no gifts of fine gold, a heart that is frozen, earth's pleasantness dead. And he dreams of the hallmen, the dealing of treasure, the days of his youth, when his lord bade welcome to wassail and feast, but gone is the gladness, and never again shall come the loved counsel of comrade and king. Lines 26 to 34. The physicality and social nature of Anglo-Saxon life comes out in these lines. Even the wanderer's sorrow is described as a bitter companion that he stands shoulder to shoulder with, lines 26 and 27. At the same time, sorrow is a burden that he bears like a lead weight. The wanderer's sorrow has stripped the world of its happiness, and his heart is frozen, reflecting, of course, the environment around him, 29 to 30. In an oral culture where history, news, joy, and pain are all shared verbally, the withdrawal the wanderer feels in the remaining lines is thrown into a sharper contrast. He was a youth. The phrase in days of, quote unquote, indicates that he had a past that accustomed him to a highly social life, lines 28. A life that is not so different from the present. People connecting on social media around the world and the easy maintenance of our social relationships. But regardless, even today, technology has not yet bridged the gap of death. The death of friends is something we as humans all feel.
And when there is a loss in someone's life, your automatic impulse, part of the grieving process for some, is to try to fill that void with another friend, or if it's your dog that passed away, with another dog or another animal. And technology has no solution for loneliness. So technology is not going to fix your loneliness, right? It's up to you to wander to find a person that you can trust, like this wanderer has. I think everyone listening has been the wanderer or may be the wanderer now.
It's true. So let's continue. Even in slumber his sorrow assaileth, and dreaming he claspeth his dear lord again. Head on knee, hand on knee, loyally laying, pledging his liege as in days long past. Then from his slumber he starts lonely hearted, beholding grey stretches of tossing sea, seabirds bathing with wings outspread, while hailstorms darken and driving snow. Bitter, then, is the bane of his wretchedness, the longing for loved one, his grief is renewed. The forms of his kinsmen take shape in the silence. In rapture he greets them, in gladness he scans old comrades remembered. They melt into air with no word of greeting to gladden his heart. Then again surges his sorrow upon him, and grimly he spurs his weary spirit chest once more to the toil of the tossing sea. In lines 35 to 48, the intermixing fealty, physical, emotional suffering, and the use of the environment are emphasized. The wanderer slipped into a waking dream to try and escape his sorrow and the environment. But his vision, of course, brings nothing but more pain. He relives the moment when he pledged the service to his Lord, the quote unquote head on knee, hand on knee, loyally laying, where he potentially laid his head in the lap of his Lord. This memory is not a happy one anymore, however, as we see in lines 35 to 38. Lines 39 to 44 are a stark reminder of his position on the ocean, crossing sea and the hailstorms and snow. They will be set upon him just as his wretchedness is after waking from the memory. There's a link between physical and emotional suffering here. His mind suffers the grief as his body suffers the cold. For the Anglo-Saxons, the mind, of course, could temporarily abandon the body, and these lapses of consciousness are, in, of course, the author's interpretation, an example of the Anglo-Saxon mind trying to free itself of physical suffering. The sense of loyalty, duty, responsibility that are caught up in the fealty of the wanderer, as they are imprinted upon him by his culture, serve to also intensify those feelings and make his image one that would have been more keenly felt by the original audience. Lines 49 to 51 begin a turning away from the brooding and repressed thoughts of the wanderer that he has been vocalizing up to this point. Heretofore, the visions of the wanderer, his description, and his world have been largely negative. However, the negativity had a place for the Anglo-Saxons, as we shall see. His sorrow surges upon him as if it were an enemy to be beaten or a wave to be conquered. The wanderer is spurred on by grim determination, the determination of an exhausted man that has lost everything and still has a hard road ahead. See lines 49 through 51. This grimness in the face of adversity, the struggle to overcome conflict and not fold to it, as it is stated in an Anglo-Saxon way here, but once translated becomes a thematic component of the hero's journey. Unlike any hero, though, the wanderer fails. His lord, his friends, his loved ones are all dead. This short section shows the message of the medieval mind. Life is hard, and it is a fight for survival when you are not on the winning side.
And this is true even today in our modern society. And though we don't have weapons and we're not at war per se, people fight wars and battles every day, every breath. It could be the war against addiction. It could be the war against impulse control, right? It could be whatever struggles a human being faces on a daily. It also shows the true need of just what a helping hand up, or a simple smile can do to anyone.
Alright, y'all, this is going to bring an end to part 1. I hadn't initially planned on splitting this video up into 2 parts, but please return in a couple of weeks for part 2. I'm sorry for the wait. The video would be about 50 or so minutes if I didn't split this up, so I figured here would be the best stopping point. If you like this, please remember to leave a like, share, subscribe, and return for more medieval disability and, of course, game studies related content. Thank you.